there's nothing romantic with not having time for your friends or family. It's not romantic to not be able to take a shower because you have to prioritize sleep. What is romantic is having a happy and healthy team. The first time I heard about crunch was actually in a building not too far away from here. I had just started my first year as a game developer student, and let's say my dreams was big. People talked about crunch, and there was something magical behind those words. It was a mix between admiration, pride, and fear. When I meet people today, a lot of them assume that I must be stressing and crunching a lot. And they wonder, how do you do it? Especially since I'm working on a game that has weekly releases. To be honest, weekly releases can indeed be stressful sometimes. And I believe that when working with weekly releases, you always have to evaluate it. And that is something we do in our team, because we always want to do what's best for our players. But one thing that I can say is certain for weekly releases is that I've been working with this for 5 years, and I haven't had a need to crunch in forever. My name is Karoline. I was born in Stockholm, but my dreams of becoming a game developer brought me here, to Skövde. After my graduation, I moved to California for a while. I thought it would be a really, warm and nice, sunny experience. I went there during mid-fall and spent my time there during the winter. What I didn't know was that it can be really cold in California during the winter, and I found one of the coldest houses. So we had around 10 degrees during nighttime. So I gave up on the cold, came back to Sweden, and it didn't take me too long before I found a new company working at here in Sweden. The company I'm currently working as a lead designer for, Star Stable Entertainment. I'm not sure if you've heard about Star Stable before, so I'm just going to show you a quick summary about basically what it is we're doing, so you will understand what I'm talking about later on. Star Stable Online is an online horse game adventure with over 500,000 monthly active users. We have translated the game to 14 different languages, and a fun fact is that over 50% of our employees are women. Our target audience are girls in the age of 8 to 18 years old. And we're also targeting gamers who love horses and horse adventures, basically. Overall, it's a family-friendly game. And as I mentioned in the beginning, we have weekly updates. That means that every Wednesday we release new content. This can be anything from new horses to new quests to new features or new areas, basically. The journey of working as a developer with weekly releases has been everything but easy. When I joined the team 5 years ago, it was quite a small team. I think we were around 10 people at that time. And we were sitting in an apartment that we have redone to an office space. And the whole feeling was a startup company. The benefits of working in a small team, I think some of you in here are probably familiar with this, is that you sit really close with your colleagues and you work really close. You don't need a lot of structure, you don't need a lot of planning meetings, because you all know what you're working forward and what goals you have, and you know what needs to be done. And you will also probably wear many hats, which can both be super fun, since you will get the chance to learn a lot. But it can also be a bit messy for someone else entering that project. Think of it a bit like, the messy room, where you know exactly where everything is, but when you bring someone else in, they might have a hard time finding this. So basically what happened for us was that we went from this small team and we started to grow, and we grow a lot. And we encountered something that I am going to refer to as growing pain. In quite a short while, we needed to move office, not just once. We needed to move office a couple of times. I remember one time, or it was during 1 year, we had a new employee every week. So basically the team was growing crazy. And what happened during this time was that the developer team could not longer just know what everyone else was doing, because we were too many. It was impossible. And suddenly, with that, came that we started to lose the overview that we had. And instead, we could just see one release at a time. We as a team was also, and has always, been really passionate about our work. Because we really care about our players. And that meant that we had a habit of doing passion and feature creeping. For you who doesn't know what passion or feature creeping is, it's basically when you adding more stuff. You're not improving stuff. That's an agile of working. But feature and passion creeping is that you just add it. You just push more stuff in. Think about it as you're building a summer house. You're going to build this small summer house, and you have started to, build the ground, the walls, and then suddenly you're like, well, it would be nice if I could invite some friends, so let's add an extra floor. And maybe I should have a parking lot. Well, I have a lot of friends, so maybe I should add 5 extra floors. Why not make it 7? And then we can have a garage. Make it 3-floor garage. So you're still thinking that I'm going to do this small summer house, but what you're starting to plan for and adding stuff for is a hotel. And yeah, this is not always a good way of working. So for us, it kind of led to chaos. As I mentioned, we could only see the next release and not the bigger picture. And we needed to do something about this. We needed to find structure and tools to gain stability again for us. So what we started to do was that we started to work with constraints and clear goals. But we also started to think more agile, because an agile development process works so perfect together with clear goals and constraints. And by doing this, we could gain control. Suddenly, we just didn't focus on the next release anymore, because we were able to move one step above and see the whole picture. We went from thinking, how much content can we add to this release? Instead, we started to think about, what is the expectation of our players? And what is it that we need to do in the time frame that we have to meet those? These two questions might seem similar at first for you, but there are a big difference between them. The first one focuses on how much you and your team can push yourself without thinking of either the value for the player or the effort for the team. You're just acting on emotions. The second question, however, focus what is realistic and what is the player expectation. It's a question from an analytic point of view, where you are looking at the value versus the effort, both for the player but also for the team. Because what's important to remember is that high value for the player is not always high effort for the team. So this was not something that happened during a night. This was a process that we went through. And as I mentioned in the beginning, we always evaluate what we're doing. And this is something that we really had start to put into a system. That after every project, we evaluate that project. What went well, what didn't went well, and what should we do next time to prevent it from, like with these mistakes happening again, basically. I personally, at that time, when we started to go through this change, had a quite hard time with this, because the junior designer in me at that time thought that constraints and goals would limit me. It would basically constrain me. I wouldn't be able to do all this stuff that I wanted to do, and I felt like, you know, the producers and everything, they just standing there and say like no to every fun thing that you want to do. However, what I realize now after is that I really grow a lot during this process and this time. Because when you're working with clear constraints and goals, and especially with an agile way of thinking, you can't just go with the first cool idea. Because you have to be smart and always to think. You have to ask yourself, is this idea something that will meet the player expectation? Is the solution that I'm having worth the value for the player versus the effort for me and my team? So to demonstrate a bit how we started to work, I want to show you this picture. This picture was something I was shown a couple of years ago from our producer. And I was later reminded of this picture just a couple of weeks ago. And I think if you're just Googling like iterative processes or agile working development, you will see a lot of these pictures. And I think it's showing so good how this works. So before, we kind of worked in the upper example. So we got a task. Let's say that we are going to create a transportation tool to the player. And we in the team is like, OK, let's make a transportation tool. Let's make a car. And because the theme of this conference is sustainability, let's make a Tesla. So the team is like, let's make a Tesla. And we are like, OK, you go and make awesome wheels for the car. And you are going to do this really fancy leather seats. And we're going to have like 5 different ways the player can, you know, fasten themselves while they're driving. And we're going to have like it in 10 different colors. And I'm going to work on the, you know, control panel. It's going to be amazing. So everyone is working on their specific part. They want to make it perfect. And we don't really see the whole picture, basically. So what happened when we worked in this kind of way, especially when we grow, because when you're, once again, when you're a small company, you know what everyone is doing. When you start to grow, you can't keep that in mind, or you will lose that, basically. So what happens when you do, like in the first example, is that, let's say that you have 10 weeks of developing something. On week 9, you are just on the 4th stage. You don't have a final product for your players. And this means that you will need to crunch to get it done, or you will fail to deliver something. And this is not a good way of working. What is better is that we started basically to do is the bottom example, that we started to ask ourselves in the beginning of the project that, OK, we're going to do a transportation tool for the player. What is the minimum viable product? Well, it's a skateboard. That is the minimum thing we can do to meet that expectation of a transportation tool. But we as a team want more than that. We would love to give the players a Tesla. But by working in iterations and working to get a product early on, and also work in the onion way, if you've heard about it, it's that you start with core, and then you're adding layer on top of layer on top of layer, because then you can always evaluate what is this layer worth for the player, and how much does it cost for the team to produce it. And by working in this way, if we say we have the same example, we have 10 weeks of production time, and on week 9 we are on the motorbike. Well, on week 9 we all have a nice motorbike, and now the team can actually have something to release. There's no need of crunch because we actually have something to deliver. Maybe we wanted to do the Tesla, and in that case we can ask ourselves, like, okay, what would it take for the team to get the Tesla? Is it possible to make it within this week? Or maybe we should just go with the motorbike and continue working on the Tesla and release it later on. So to kind of summarize a bit of this that I've been talking about is player expectation is not a solid term. It depends so much on what type of project you are doing, in what context and for who. But try as early as possible to find your minimum viable product for your players. You will never have enough time to do everything. So try to think about what is the value of every new layer to this onion that you want to add, and what is the effort? What is it going to cost you to add this new layer? Don't let passion drive you to seek perfection. Set up constraints and goals for your project. Constraints can be what time frame and what resources do you have? And what is the player expectations? What are those really? Once again, a transportation tool doesn't have to be a Tesla. It can be a skateboard. It can be that. And be smart and find good solutions to your problems, because I know that you can do it. Finally, I'm just going to put it out there. Crunch is not romantic. Crunch is bad planning. There's nothing romantic with not having time for your friends or family. It's not romantic to not be able to take a shower because you have to prioritize sleep. What is romantic is having a happy and healthy team. A healthy team that can be creative and find smart solutions through agile development and having clear goals and constraints. A healthy team that can inspire and be role models, both for the players they're developing the game for, but also for the new generation of game developers. It is romantic to have a healthy team so they can create games that can inspire their players in a way that games are meant to be. Because I believe that games are meant to encourage the players. Games are meant to give the player a satisfaction and a feeling of accomplishment. And games are also meant to be, as in our case, in Star Stable case, meant to encourage the player to believe that they are the hero that we know that they are. Thank you.